Hey guys, I'm especially excited about this one. I've had a lot of you guys requesting that I get more quantum healing, med bed, science type folks in. And I was fortunate with Jason. We've had him on before, guys, and he was just awesome. I really enjoy it. We go back and forth a lot outside of podcasts just with questions and science. And he is one of my favorite people to have conversations with on physics and quantum physics. And it is some kind of fun, interesting, maybe a little out there for some of you guys in the terminology, but I think you're going to enjoy it. I'm going to start by bringing in Jason first. Jason, good to see you.
Hey, great intro.
Yeah, well, I don't even know how to put that one in there. I mean, because your list of all the things you've done, all the things you're working on, is just so many like world-changing things, and I'm excited. But I better go ahead and bring in Glenn, or I'll just end up burning up your ear the whole time.
Hi, folks.
Glenn, good to see you again. So where can we start? Do we start with science and then move towards the Q wellness beds? Where do we start the conversation with folks, especially since we're only running with about 50 minutes or so? So I don't even know where to start. Now, I would love to be able to bring you on with like 20 different guests for like 5 hours on a weekend and just have like a seminar.
Yeah, that would be fun for sure. I think that it makes sense to start with validated science, because that's what Glenn specializes in. Like, he is our chief science officer at Void Space Labs. So the Void Space Labs is actually the company that goes through and takes void space technology products and verifies them through clinical studies and trials and things of that nature. And Glenn is our chief science officer over at Void Space Labs. If you don't know about Glenn Ryan a little bit, we'll take some time here and let Glenn explain just a little intro real quick, Glenn, for the people that don't know your credentials.
Hi, folks. I am a biomedical research scientist. I used to work at Harvard and Stanford, and I left academia because I really wanted to pursue this alternative medicine, alternative energy field. And I went and got a PhD because I realized that would help with the credibility. The more out there I got, and the more away from mainstream science, the more you need the credentials of mainstream scientists to be heard and believed. So I went and got a PhD at the University of London. I lived in England for 12 years and became an Anglophile. And I came back to work as an assistant professor at Mount Sinai Medical Center in New York. And then I worked at Stanford and went to California, my big trip to California. And I got, at a very early age, got turned on to the whole idea that energy can heal the body, and we don't need drugs and we don't need chemicals. And energy is in the body, and it's so much more natural than these, drugs that are not natural to the body and made in a laboratory, blah, blah, blah. So I have been pursuing this for many years, and it was actually Ralph Sudath, who was the inventor of the quantum wellness bed, who connected Jason and I. I've known Ralph for years, and Jason has known Ralph for years. And so because of the quantum energy bed, we've all been reconnected and connected. And I'm sure Jason and I have worked together in past lives. It was a, instant, rapport kind of thing. And that's how it all came about in a nutshell.
Awesome. Good intro. One thing he didn't say is that he's like one of the leading experts in DNA science. Like, he's just incredible with his skill of DNA.
I can't say that about myself. I pursue a lot of different paths. My obsession is energy that's not studied by mainstream science. So at first I went from chemistry to energy, and then I discovered that there was this field called bioelectromagnetics, where all these scientists were studying how electromagnetic fields heal the body. And then I said, well, yeah, but there's all these scientists doing that. I want to go where no man has gone before. So I started studying what's called subtle energy, all the other kinds of energy that is described in the physics literature, but biologists have no clue. And they certainly don't study the biological effects of these esoteric forms of energy. And you folks may have heard the term scalar energy. And that was kind of like a jumping off point because scalar energy is the kind of energy that you can generate in the lab. When I started this 40 years ago, nobody had done any studies on scalar energy in terms of the biological healing effects. And that's kind of my claim to fame, if you will, because I was one of the first people to do that. And then I've studied other forms of subtle energy. And then, of course, there's the quantum energy that Jason has figured out how to convert into physical energy that we can actually study and generate in a lab. And this would probably be a good time for Jason to talk a little bit about that kind of energy. I was talking about the different kinds of subtle energies is like a whole topic in itself. But we want to focus on the kind of energy that Jason works with and is a master at accessing and making available for the world to use.
Yeah. So first of all, one thing that me and Glenn are working on is rewriting physics, kind of helping people to understand more about space and time from a different angle. And in that process, it creates something that I called subspacing, but apparently science is calling it void space, the space between, in its own way, which is interesting because one thing that's real fun about me and Glenn is we have these conversations and then he goes and looks up things and finds out, oh, okay, yeah, no, that's scientific. We're going to have to write a paper about this, and this, so that we can get this published. So we're trying to pioneer a new way of understanding science and physics for that matter, which is quantum physics, but from a different perspective where we talk about a space between time. So if you have matter, space, and time, right? The difference is that we as human beings often look from a matter perspective through into time. But what I like to teach people how to do is something called malleable time, the ability to manipulate and change time through creating a quantum layer prior from time to space. We can create something called a subspace. And we can actually program that to a point that science can recognize the difference through a gram scale, as well as the DNA changes and things like that, that are exponential, far greater than anything that Glenn had seen before. Right, Glenn?
Well, yeah, we can talk about the specific experiments, but we want to here introduce the whole idea of this kind of energy, which Jason calls subspace. We have to actually give the energy itself a name. I mean, in physics, you know, space-time, it was discovered that time is not necessarily just this entity that exists everywhere in space, because the traditional theory is that space and time are separate. Then Einstein comes along and says, well, no, not really. Space-time is a conglomeration of both space and time. And space has 3 dimensions and time has a 1 dimension. So that makes 4 dimensions. But turns out that the physics is not as simple as that, because you can have more than 1 dimension of time. And then when you combine them, you end up going into higher dimensional reality. So you don't only have the 4 dimensions of space and time that we live in, but if you introduce malleable time or additional types of time, let alone different types of matter, you can create higher dimensional energies and a higher dimensional space-time. Space-time in itself in physics is not limited to one entity. They can change space-time. In the physics literature, you can actually rotate space-time. You can perturb it. You can transform it. So they do have ways of changing space-time itself in the physics world. And that's my way of describing what Jason does, so that we end up changing space-time itself. And when you do that, you change the energies that make up space-time, of which there are many types in addition to electromagnetic.
Exactly. Yeah. The type of energy I work with is what I call malleable time, or the capability to create a subspacing routine between time and space so that you can alter or change or twist time itself through a program. And I found that there's 144 layers of time that fit between subspace, right? So the ability to communicate with time differently is one of the magical parts where we come into that space. And this is the study that Glenn did on the source seed technology as well as the cloud technology, both of which had a 90% improve in conductivity. I'll let Glenn go further into this because I don't really know how to express this part because he's the one that's got all the PhD. Like, I'm just me.
Well, yeah, okay, but I wanted people to understand what's unique about these technologies that void space is introducing to the world, because that's for me, that's where we start, because needless to say, I'm obsessed with energy and different kinds of energy. But folks, you have to really understand that what Jason is able to do by creating this new kind of energy is to create a new kind of energy. And then the question is, well, what does it do? So later in the show, we're going to hear about, how people react to this kind of energy. But to start with, we're going to start with some experiments that I did in my lab, which is the Quantum Biology Research Lab, which has been around for 30 odd years. And as Jason said, it's now being incorporated into Void Space Technologies company. So the very first thing I wanted to do was to see how this energy affects human DNA. Why DNA? Well, DNA, everyone's heard of DNA. I could tell you, some obscure enzyme and people are going to go, well, what's that? So that's a good starting point. DNA is so fundamental for all biological processes. DNA is very sexy, change your DNA. There's all kinds of people out there, talking about changing your DNA. And that is true. We do get DNA from our parents, but DNA that we get is not fixed. It can be changed, and the scientific community know all about these things. Even the genetic code itself can be fixed. Genetic code is just a sequence of nucleotide base pairs. And these bases that make up DNA are a bit like the amino acids that make up a protein. And proteins come from DNA. So we're talking about the basic genetic code, the basic structure of DNA itself is malleable. In science, they're called transposons, where these little individual bases can bounce around and they move. They jump from one part of the strand to another part of the strand. And then when you do that, you change the sequence, you change your genetic code. You can change the color of your eyes. You could change a disease by doing that. So the real question is, how do you do that with energy? And that's kind of been my mission on this planet, to prove that you can change the physical properties of DNA using various forms of subtle energy. Yep. Now, the way I do that in my particular lab, since I'm going to get down to the heart of what I did in showing the efficacy of Jason's technology to change DNA. So you can measure the sequence of the bases, but you can, and i.e. the genetic code, but that's actually hard to do. It's not like it happens, with the snap of a finger. It can happen, but for me, it's not the structure of the DNA, but it's the shape of the DNA that I'm more interested in, because the shape of the DNA is very malleable, like time is, and the shape of the DNA determines the function of the DNA. So the shape of the DNA is a helix. We all know that, but the helix is like a string with two strands on it, the two strands of DNA. And you take the piece of string that long, and then you drop it on the table, and it clumps into a ball. And that shape of that ball can vary enormously. And depending on the shape, you end up changing the properties. Well, the physical properties. But I don't study the physical properties because that's what everyone else does. I study the electrical properties, because the electrical energy is a kind of energy that DNA relates to the most. It's the kind of energy that you can measure in the lab very easily. It's the kind of energy of which there are now many studies. People have now caught on and said, wow, the electrical properties of DNA, that's really interesting. We never even knew DNA could conduct electricity. And what does all that mean? And then they discovered that the better it conducts electricity, the better the DNA heals itself. So when there's some kind of damage to the DNA, it's called self-healing, self-repair, DNA repair. It's got lots of different names. But when the DNA gets damaged, the better it conducts electricity, the better it repairs itself. So now we have a real functional property that we can measure, and I do measure in the lab, and there are various ways to do that. That gets kind of technical, but you can actually measure the flow of energy through the DNA. Now that flow of energy is even more interesting because depending on whether the energy flows from on the outside of the molecule or whether it flows down the central channel in the middle between the two strands of the DNA, the helix, with the center of the helix, that electricity is more like quantum electricity because it travels like 100 times faster than it's supposed to. So it's like superconducting. And then later they discovered that DNA itself is a superconductor, but that's because of this electron conductivity phenomenon. So that's what I measure. And in a way, it's a measure of the quantum properties of DNA. You know, Jason's energy is, we're talking about the, you know, being able to put energy in or get the energy between space and time. That's clearly quantum energy. So we're dealing with a whole nother kind of energy, and DNA itself has quantum properties. So it made sense to me to say, so, well, what can Jason's energy do to the quantum properties of the electrical energy of the DNA? And that's what I measured. And I've been measuring this for years, and I've been looking at different kinds of technologies. Electromagnetic fields do change the DNA, electrical conductivity, but some types of energy increase the conductivity, and some decrease the conductivity. And I haven't figured out why. It's a bit like the DNA. Sometimes the DNA needs to be speeded up, and sometimes the DNA needs to be slowed down. And I proved this measuring healers in the lab, not measuring the electrical conductivity, but measuring the winding and unwinding. Some healers increase that process and some slow it down. Some kinds of energy increase the electrical conductivity and some slow it down. So we don't really know why. But the point is here that when I measure those changes in DNA, the magnitude of those changes is in the order of 30, 40% compared to the untreated control, maybe 50%. And then when I got around to studying Jason's energy, it was twice as effective, at least twice as effective as all the other energies that I studied. So the conclusion is that this energy in DNA resonates with this kind of energy in particular, much more so than any of the other energies I've ever studied, and is therefore having a very profound effect on the body by virtue of its effect on the DNA. And that's kind of a mouthful, but we could leave it at that. I see Mark twiddling his thumb. He's going like, oh my God, this is so cool. You must have some questions to help guide this discussion because I don't know where to go from there. I'm doing other experiments on water, on the water molecule, just the electrical properties of water. We're going to be presenting that research at the International Water Conference next month in Germany. It's the conference that studies the anomalous behavior of water, not the shortage of water on the planet, not the politics of water, but the weird properties of water, the esoteric properties, the quantum properties. I mean, water itself it has quantum properties. And of course, water surrounds the DNA molecule. So now we have evidence that not only does this kind of special energy affect the DNA, but it also affects the water around the DNA. If it affects the water around the DNA, It affects the water around every cell and every molecule in the body. So we have yet to prove that other molecules respond to energy, this kind of energy, uniquely, but it's very likely that water is the mediator of this kind of energy, because water, the body is 80% water, and it surrounds all cells and all molecules.
Yep, absolutely. I feel like one thing that's kind of important to understand as well is when we're talking about quantum fields, everybody thinks they understand quantum fields. My favorite is that people are always like, whoa, well, this thing has the same quantum field as this thing. I'm like, no, there's a huge difference. So for anyone that doesn't understand quantum fields, imagine a quantum field is like an all-you-can-eat buffet, right? Depending on what's available at that buffet, you may want to eat there, you may not want to eat there. Well, your body's divine intelligence needs certain resources. And the quantum field, depending on the level of value that the quantum field can hold, there's 144 layers of the quantum field that I've mapped out personally. And most technologies out there are this level or this level or this level. The most I've ever seen was this thing called the Beamer, and it had an 8-point thing. Out of 144, it had 8 points. So there were 8 dishes that were sitting at the buffet. 8 different dishes, right? Out of 144 available dishes. So the problem becomes whenever we have a technology that forces something into our body, then we're forced to eat that food. So think about you as a little kid when your parents were like, eat your peas, and you got really irritated about it maybe because you didn't want your peas. Well, this is how your body's divine intelligence responds when you're connecting to quantum fields that aren't what you need. And it causes you to be full, so now you don't get what you need anymore. The reason that I really, really love this bed, the reason that I love the technology I work on, is because we work on the highest quantum field that I've ever seen. It's the reason that the DNA responds so strongly. That 90%, that means that out of the wholeness of 100%, 90% of it is met through this quantum field. That's a very big deal. When you look at other things, you get like 50%, you get 30%. So depending on what the DNA needs at that time, you might not have access to it. This is one of the reasons why when we move into quantum technology, we have to stop thinking that everything equals the same. Because different quantum fields are different quantum fields. You need to find the most whole quantum field, and you also need to ask whether it's good for your body and your frequency, because a quantum field is always going to be good for your body, most likely. But a quantum field is almost never good for your frequency and your body, unless it's that random dish that you need on that all-you-can-eat buffet. The only technology that still holds up to that are the ones that we feature on Void Space Technologies. For whatever reason, we keep getting amazing people who brings us inventions and are like, hey, test this out. And we test it and we're like, this is amazing. And then we support it. The idea of Void Space Technologies is to become a one-stop shop for technology that actually is real in this world. It's something that we really pride ourselves on, is like, is this something that really does support at that level? You know, and those are the products and those are the services that we look to find in the world. The bed is one of those. It is an incredible, incredible thing. And the reason that I wanted Glenn to start out with like talking about DNA and conductivity is because your DNA is what rewrites your whole body. It's what changes the way that you function and grow in the world. So if you force your DNA to adapt or change, you create critical problems because your body can't sustain it. This is one of the reasons why certain energy technologies out there can be extremely dangerous, is because they create a reliance on. But a true quantum field asks nothing, is all, and asks nothing. It's just available. That's it. And this is what's so important to understand when you look at technologies. Is it a forceful quantum technology? Is it forcing you to eat your peas, or is it inviting you to? The more that you have something that invites you to something, the more that you're naturally going to have what you need. And this is the key about quantum fields. So there are tons of technologies out there on the market right now that say they create quantum fields. Almost all of them create a small little quantum field, or they have a forceful quantum field, which is even worse in my opinion. The reason that I love the bed is it creates the greatest quantum field I've ever seen. And it doesn't force your body to receive anything. It's just something you lay in, and your body's divine intelligence learns from it and does what it needs to do. That, to me, is more valuable than anything that can cause you to regrow something or change something. There's a lot of technology out there that people talk about. I've never seen one, by the way, but everyone says that there's this technology that regrows limbs and does all this other stuff. And to me, I'm actually terrified of technology that does that because of the cost. When you take something to grow something at that intensity, that's a force to grow, right? You're not letting your body do it. You're literally programming it, kind of like CRISPR or those other things where you're changing your DNA in a way that you don't necessarily know the consequence to. You're not inviting your body's divine intelligence to create or to grow or to build. You're forcing it to do something. Those can be extremely dangerous. So I'm not saying you shouldn't. If you are one of those people that want to go and experience those things, then by all means, like, feel free to. But if you're wanting your intelligence, your divine intelligence to come online, and you're wanting to actually be a sovereign being and to stabilize your body naturally by going through the feelings and the emotions and other things that are holding it, then, you know, going with something that's an introduction, that's providing you all the resources you need so that you can then begin to absorb and go to that buffet as you need to, so that you can go eat some food, go process, go eat some food, and go process. That way your divine intelligence comes online. Yeah, it's slower, but it's also you. And there's a huge difference between that.
Sorry, I want to just add a little bit about the concept of divine intelligence, because you guys have to understand that there, as I said before, there are many different kinds of energies, and the body is most familiar with electromagnetic because it's the most dense energy. It's the kind that's closest to the physical body, and we know from lots of research that electromagnetic fields regulate and control the biochemical processes in the body. But there are much more fundamental energies, and there are many layers of, so the body's down here, and then there are many layers until you get to the quantum level, which is the most refined energy that we can create in the lab. And then if you go even higher up, like off the scale here, you get to divine energy. And that's the point that Jason was making about having access to the divine intelligence. Because when you're working with such refined energy, you are closer to the highest, purest level divine energy. And that way the information from that level into the quantum level can then filter down into the physical electromagnetic level and then into the body. And that's what's so unique about this. Although Jason said there are other technologies out there that use quantum fields, you know, I hate to be a skeptic here, but a lot of these people claim to use quantum fields, but they're not really using quantum fields. Quantum fields can be generated in the lab. That's true. But the kind of technology that can generate quantum fields, like metamaterials and nanoparticles and superconductors and quantum lasers. I mean, this is really high-tech university, expensive as hell kind of equipment to generate, and it's not really practical yet to bring that high-level university technology down to the public and make it consumable. So there's not really a lot of competitors. There are people that generate scalar energy, but scalar energy is one notch above electromagnetic. And scalar energy does have some quantum properties, that's true, but I wouldn't call it a quantum field. So you got to go several notches higher in order to get to the quantum level up here. And that's the level that Jason works at.
Yeah. I think it's important to just acknowledge that aspect of things too, because so many people, this is like a new emerging science. So nobody really understands what they're talking about in it yet. They have ideas, and many people are like, oh, 0 point energy is quantum energy. Well, is it? It could be. It depends. Like, because the 0 point is basically all things that no one understands what to say. They just put them there. And that's fair. You know, that's how humanity does things. They have to label things. They have to figure out some form of analyzation to make it make sense. So the main thing is the difference in the feeling of something, though. If you receive a real quantum field, the feeling is an upliftment. It's a relaxing expression. Let's see. Oh, we're at 30 minutes already. Wow, that was. Uh, So let's go into kind of that concept then. Mark, you said that you've done 2 sessions now, and
Yes.
what is the feeling that you get when the session as like beginning or the after effects of that experience for you?
When the session first starts, and guys, they did remote sessions. I am really looking forward to actually being physically in a bed as well. But I was really surprised because I've done, I'm trying to remember the bed out of Germany, the 9 of something, whatever. I tried one of those remote things, didn't notice a thing. This is the first one where I've tried anything remote where I can measure it on myself and I could like physically feel it. Had increased strength for a couple of days after, but it was that strange. It's almost like almost like a drunk feeling in the first few minutes. And then by the time that hour and 15 minutes or whatever that was, that time period, such a tremendous sense of contentment, which to me was just really neat. Just an overall sense that you're just complete, kind of like after a family Sunday dinner growing up where you had time with family. You know, the feelings were good, the food was good. And that's the only way I can really describe it, that contentment where nothing's wrong in your world. It was awesome. Both times it's been awesome.
I love that you use that word. So what you basically said is what I was saying as well, right? Like, so you had everything you needed resource wise to reach that optimum state of contentment. And the example that you gave is the same thing. You had food and family, and those are supposedly some of the greatest ways to get into that space of contentment. So what you're doing as describing those two is the same thing, quantum fields, right? People have fields too. And when you're around the right fields, it unlocks doors for you. And when you have the right substance, which is certain types of food, then you actually have resources. The difference in the bed and going to like a family night that is a positive experience is that they're the same from the resource perspective, but at a quantum level, the bed actually provides all the resources, whereas the experience then becomes more of 2 people experiencing something or 3 people experiencing something. It creates an overlap of those fields. You still get met in certain ways, but the total complete value of being met is a completely different situation. And when you get to experience that, it's like next level because your body actually begins to understand divinity, the divine intelligence of what you are, because you have the resources to do that. Maslow talks about this as higher thought, the construct that you have your basic needs met, so you're allowed to have higher thought, right? I believe that the quantum field is the answer to self-actualization. To truly understand self-actualization, we have to be met at every level so that we can open up wholly and completely into ourselves. And that's one of the reasons why I love the bed so much. And I loved your story on that because that reminded me exactly of what I hope to achieve. I want to help build a world where everyone has access to this so that everyone can be in that state of contentment and actually design and build greater things from there. Because this isn't the best thing to ever exist. It's the best thing that exists that I know of right now. But my hope is in 10 years that we've advanced so far beyond what we can even imagine today, that the bed is no longer required because nature and outside the whole field has been rebuilt. Because the Earth actually has a stronger quantum field than anything else. The problem is the saturation between the sky and the Earth, it's broken. So we don't actually get the full experience of the field that we need. It's one of the reasons why I created the source seeds in the first place, was to create that change. So it makes me very happy to hear that story about how the quantum field helped you. And Glenn, what is yours?
Well, well, my experience on the bed was there were 3 of us who all had the same experience when we after the night afterwards, we all experienced kind of a detox, a release of previous issues that came to the surface. And, whether we experience physical things like in my case, sore throat, because I had COVID and my COVID throat symptoms never went away. And then after 3 treatments on the bed, that, the next day, everything got worse and then it got better. So the symptoms reemerged, then were released from my body, and now they're completely gone. So I was kind of tuning in more to the physical stuff. I mean, it's hard to say emotionally and psychologically what was happening because I was exposed to a whole new environment and to Jason's energy because he was physically there. So his own energy on top of the energy from the bed, certainly raised my consciousness. But at the physical level, that's what I experienced.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm actually a huge fan of learning more and more about the quantum field and hearing how it's affecting people, because each time that somebody shares, it's like, oh, wow, that's so cool. Now I can learn about that too. So contentment is a great way to describe it. I haven't heard that before. Physical health things I have heard a lot about, but I'm always glad to hear more. And the people that we're about to bring in are going to tell some more of their stories as well. We originally had this as a 2-hour thing, and then like it didn't happen. We only have 50 minutes today, so we're gonna try to go really fast at the same time. There is one thing that I do want to say before we bring people in, though. For me personally, the bed is that contentment is a great way to describe it. My favorite thing is I call it drifting, which is, when you go to sleep, you have this line that you can enter, right? But then you can also, if you wake up and then you go back to bed, you know how you feel like you're almost like drifting through time and space? That's my favorite thing in the world to do. But it costs so many resources to float right before sleep and right before awake in that middle ground. And so I can do that on the bed though for hours with no issue. So I just like to lay there and just drift and experience and learn. And it's amazing because all the resources I need to continue to stay in that state are there. So that's one of those things for me that I love the most. Health wise, I don't really have any health conditions or anything like that. So I haven't noticed anything from a physical perspective. If I do get migraines and I go lay on the bed, it helps tremendously. But from a physical perspective, I don't really have that many things. This is why I'm really glad to bring in these other people though, because they have seen and witnessed and experienced really amazing things. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about what they've done and what they've experienced. So before we bring them in, I just wanted to bring one last thing up around the source seed technology, because it was something that I said really fast in passing, but we have an initiative called the CRM initiative, or the Crystallized Roots movement, and we're planting source seed trees, and they're growing really fast. But what we've noticed that's really interesting is they're creating a new quantum field, and that quantum field is able to communicate with the sky much faster than normal. One person was saying that it's somewhere between 6 to 8 hours for a new cloud to form versus 3 days. So the trees are actually normalizing weather patterns through their communication using biophotons and quantum fields to communicate with the sky. It's actually creating that division where the sky is broken, the light's penetrating through it finally, and actually creating a clear communication. And in those areas, people have noticed very amazing things physically and spiritually just by being around those kind of trees. So my goal is to plant 1 million of these worldwide, because I believe at that point the mycelium network will carry the frequency and everyone will have a quantum field that's intact again. And I do believe that at that point, whenever we finally hit that precipice, maybe like 5 to 8 years from now, where the entire world is vibrating at that, then not only will we be a fifth dimensional planet, but we'll also have the resources to upkeep the fifth dimensional field that will help support all of us so that we can heal and grow together much faster than we can ever imagine. So I have a really bright viewpoint of what the future holds for us, because I watch every day the quantum field get stronger, not weaker, for the Earth itself. And that tells me that we're headed in the right direction, despite what we see in the world. So that was something I wanted to share with you guys, because I know that right now it's pretty hard to see the truth of what's really going on. So hopefully that will inspire a little bit of hope for you. And if you want to start bringing people in, let's bring the first person in, and they can begin to express.
Who would you like to start with? Jamie, you?
Let's just do Mary Lynn first, actually.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
So, yes, I love hearing all those things about the bed. I do own the bed, but I also have it for public use, and I've been very blessed to be able to do that. I love, Mark, that you have that contentment feeling, because other people I know are having the same thing, and they're using the word peace a lot, this very peaceful, calming feeling that they haven't had in a very long time. They're almost kind of like Jason drifting when they get off. You can still feel them shifting. So I need to have them sit down for a little bit. So I find that truly amazing that everybody's kind of seeing and feeling the same thing. But for me, what I always tell people is that the beautiful thing about this bed is that it's you doing you at your highest level. So I have no idea what experience you're going to have. I can't tell you. And half the time they can't even express it right away to me as well. And then they'll come on again and they'll say, oh, I can't wait to have that same experience. And I kind of chuckle and I'm like, well, it's never the same way twice because you're never the same way twice. So it's going to be an entirely different experience. Just let it be whatever it's going to be. And they're always amazed how every time it's different because it meets them where they're at and gives them the resources they need at that particular time. So I've had people that are very stressful or have to speak in front of people and are very anxious about it. And they seem to find this calm and peace so that they can show up being who they are in those particular environments. So it is spiritual, it is emotional, and it is physical. I've had people who have had pain for many years in their shoulders and their knees, and the pain goes away after 1 or 2 sessions. Unless they're a farmer like one of them is, and he keeps going underneath the tractors and re-injuring again, but it's okay. Then he gets back on the bed. But so the physical piece is very important too. Like Glenn, I've had people who have had COVID, been on the bed, same experience that Glenn had. So incredible experience. The next day they're detoxing, however it's going to show up for their body. Feels awful, but then the day after that, they're like, if they've never had it. It's totally gone. Same thing with the long haul COVID symptoms that some people are having. They're getting on the bed and they're finding that that's disappearing as well. Not everybody has detoxing. It just depends on you and your body is what I'm finding. And I'm also finding children are absolutely amazing on this bed. Oh my gosh, magical. I've had a 3-year-old up to a 10-year-old on this bed that was just, they're so connected to the divine that the experiences they teach me, well, everybody teaches me that's on the bed, but the kids, oh my gosh, the children are amazing. I had one that was autistic. He's 3 years old. He wasn't going to sit on the bed. He's bouncing off the walls. He's playing. He's putting my gong sticks in my little thing, and he's all over the place. But as an hour and a half went by, he's calming down. He's taking my hand and showing me what he wants me to do. Can you throw this domino into this waste paper basket? Can we do this? But my favorite thing is when he got up on the bed and he stood on it. It's a little 3-year-old. And he looks up at the ceiling and he comes to the very edge of the bed. He looks up and he puts his arms up and he jumps. He's expecting to fly high. He knows he can. And he does it over and over. And then he just sits there and he's just totally calm with his dad while he's sitting on the bed for a while. It's like he went from 100 miles an hour down to probably about 20. And just happy as could be. Happy, happy, happy. Kind of talking to himself, almost his own little language. It was so precious. And I talked to the dad, checked in, because I usually check people the next day, check in, see how they're doing. I checked him that night and he's like, oh my gosh, he slept like he's never slept before. And he's up and running around again. He's got all this energy. But they definitely want to come back because they definitely, both the dad and the son, felt the difference on the bed. So it's everybody doing themselves at their highest level. How can that ever not be a good thing? It's amazing. Me included. I'm old. I'm going to be 66 in October. I had that, that translucent skin you get when you get older. It's kind of, you can see through it. After 2 weeks of being on the bed, I looked solid. And that's what a friend told me when I came in. She came in to use the bed and she goes, okay, Mary Lynn, this is going to sound really weird. She goes, but you look solid. And I'm like, oh my God, that's hysterical. I love it. So it's like, yeah, all my skin totally shifted and changed. Totally. So that's a cellular level. I had a man who had really bad toe fungus. Toes are pink, cellular level. It's amazing. I am so blessed to have this bed and be able to provide the service. So thankful for Jason and all involved with this that I can't even begin to tell you. And I've got more to learn about this bed as well, because there's so much I don't know, but I'm willing to have fun and play with it all.
That's the beauty of the quantum field. There's infinite things you don't know.
Right?
And forever there will be. But you still get to have fun and explore.
Yay!
Thank you very much, Mary, for coming on and for sharing that. That was so beautiful. And I think that helps a lot of other people get a gauge for how so different what our divine intelligence will do, right? Like, you never know what you're going to get when you work with the quantum field. That's something that we believe we know, but that's our personality trying to push a belief in. When you actually experience it, it can be completely random. Sometimes you do have healing breakthroughs. Sometimes you have emotional breakthroughs. Sometimes nothing happens for you because your body just needs to rest. And there's nothing wrong with any of those experiences. The recommendation that I have for people is do it 3 times. You know, really give yourself 3 different times so that you can see the difference. One time is usually not enough because you're just like, oh, okay, something changed, but I don't know what it is. But by the second time, you're like, oh, I can notice a huge difference here. And the third time, you're like, okay, now I have 3 different ways to look at this experience. So that's what I tell people. Anyone that wants to buy a bed, definitely try it first, at least 3 times. See if it really resonates with you, you know?
Where can they try one? I mean, is there like a list of places they can go find one to try?
Yeah, actually, if you go to that site really quick, the one that I sent you, now go to Explore, and then click Learn More from the Quantum Energy Wellness Bed. And then if you scroll down, we have the store locator finally up and running. So right there, go ahead and find Quantum Energy Wellness Bed. And it'll populate in a second. But these are just the first, I think we have like 8 of them or 9 of them on right now. But we're about to have a whole lot more. So they're starting to come out into the world, which is really cool. We have a few in other international places too, which is kind of fun. But we're just now starting to finally get them out. At this point, we're only able to manufacture 120 of them a month. So we are doing our best to prioritize people that want them in locations where multiple people can experience them.
And you can do remote sessions, and I do those and give those all the time. And I'm sure the other people behind me will share with that because they can be just as powerful.
Oh, yeah.
It's different physically being on the bed, but it's also different and awesome doing a remote session as well.
Exactly. Actually, Ute is the next one, and
there we
she
go.
has done the remote. So we'll bring her in.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I've only used the bed remotely, and I know about energy. I can sense energy. I was really, really surprised of how physical the experience was for me. You know, I thought, yeah, it's a feel-good thing of sorts. I didn't know what to expect. And it was a very visceral and physical experience, hundreds of thousands of miles away from the actual bed, right? And I did this initially because I had some inflammation in my body, and just a newsflash, that didn't magically go away because ultimately that's my responsibility. You know, the bed experience that I had remotely was more that all of my cells, literally, it was a feeling that they lit up, you know? So I would call myself, I was a Christmas tree, you know? It was so amazing to have a physical experience of, yeah, I have an owie in a particular location of my body, but more importantly, my body was that orchestra that woke up and played a perfectly beautiful symphony. That was absolutely amazing. You know, so I don't know how it is to be physically on the bed. I will experience this soon, I'm sure. But doing remote sessions is really awesome because I can literally stay at home and I can open up. And, you know, you said things like, I'm invited to something, right? And that is the experience. It is amazing. I never thought it would be possible to physically feel, hot dang, I'm actually on the bed while I'm physically in my own, right? So, and for me personally, it's really important that I don't go in with an expectation because, as Marilyn said, it is different each time. Sometimes it's more subtle, and sometimes it's just like, oh, it's like a bath, like an energy bath. I always feel more balanced. And that doesn't mean I knew I was not balanced before, but I feel definitely more balanced. And also, I have a house full of animals, and they, it doesn't matter whether they have a scheduled session, they hop on the bed. And, and it is palpable how they go into the zone, and they don't think as much as we do, going like, oh, is this real? Is this, is that? We go like, oh, yeah, I have to test it. What is this? And so it's really, really amazing for me to have an opportunity to enhance my overall being, actually. And Jason, I contacted you after my first session. I felt really lit up, but I felt grounded, not like like this, which for me is important, that I'm able to function, but I'm in this illuminated, expanded space. I'm this expanded version of myself. And then with physical stuff, I know, okay, either things shift or they don't. And I accept that, because I have more responsibility than outsourcing something. The bed is something that helps me self-source.
Yep.
Right. And so I just want to say that it's not a thing that I'm using. It is something that is a gift to how I am, and how I can be bigger, So I'm super happy, and just the surprise of how physical it is. When I hear you, Marilyn, I'm going like, I never was so far on it, and it's like, it is physical, and that's pretty cool, to say it nicely.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I know that we're over on time. Do you have time?
We're going to go for about 3 more minutes, because I really want to hear Jamie's story. And then we really need to get a time scheduled. So, because I'm seeing so many questions, Jason. I don't know if Glenn is available this coming weekend or something like that for a longer one, because I am seeing so many awesome questions, like how do we schedule a remote session? How do we do those? Jason, I'd like to work out with you so I can do a contest maybe in my community, where I can like give away some free sessions, remote sessions, for some of the folks that need it, just so we can get their real, unadulterated take on it for people that really want to try it. But we'll work that off air. Jamie.
Awesome. Hi, can you guys hear me well?
Yep.
Cool. So when you said 3 minutes, I started my timer. So I'm going to do my best to not talk super fast and stay grounded and get out what I want to say. So, wow, amazing talk, first and foremost, because as Glenn was talking about everything, I felt my body parts that he was talking about actually activating. And so when you get that sense of like, oh yeah, your body knows those things, it's just so amazing. So I've had the pleasure of holding remote sessions as well as in-person sessions at a private residence that I work at. And I've seen people that have walkers that could hardly walk, just forget their walker overnight and like not need it. I did have the pleasure of meeting the woman who couldn't see out of one of her eyes and started gaining sight back after an extended stay on the bed. But more often than not, so I'm a very in my feelings person. I'm a very energetically sensitive person. So I don't really experience too much of the physical aspects of the bed. But what I notice being in the same room as people is just their energy completely shifts. Mm-hmm. You can tell that like they're having like 70% less thoughts. There's less around them. The whole room kind of lights up, and being sensitive, being in the room, that's like, I'm sure Mary Lynn could relate to this. You're just like, whoa, everything is so much brighter. And for myself, since there's only a few seconds left, I did want to touch on mental health, because the way that I feel things is very emotionally and feeling and energetically sensitive, and being as someone that has intense PTSD triggers. When I use the bed regularly, I am able to start processing things. Like after the 10 minutes it takes for my central nervous system to actually get into a receptive mode, I feel from the inside, my body start expanding from the inside. Whereas with like Reiki or other things, you feel the energy coming from outside in. With the bed, I feel it coming from inside out. And that is it. What it feels to me, Ute, it made me want to cry a little bit, because when you said you're like that, but you're grounded, that's exactly what it feels like. And it feels like nature. Like it feels like what it's supposed to feel like. And you don't know, but you feel that you know that, because it's like a remembrance. But yeah, I'm 23 seconds over. So thank you for letting me share. Just, it's so amazing to be in this space. And I'm so excited to see this out there, especially for like veterans or people that have very little control over their emotional body, because what's next is physical, physical encompassing of those unprocessed feelings and emotions that I often feel. But super thankful for the bed, super thankful for this talk and for this tech to become mainstream.
Just I want to say thank you for all of y'all for coming in. I really, really appreciate hearing the stories. It warms my heart. It's one of the reasons why I've dedicated so much time to this project, is getting this out there, because I know that these experiences are becoming more and more common for people that use the bed, and that makes me happy. The other aspect that I want to just quickly say, I know that we're over time, Mark, so I want to honor that. But for those of you that want to do remote sessions, that store locator that Mark showed you, when you go to voidspacetech.org, you can get all your questions answered here. You can click any of those, like just click one of the random ones over there on the side. It doesn't matter. See, it tells you the phone number to call to book your session. If you're doing a remote, you can go with any one of those areas that glow. Mary Lynn's is on there as well. All of us out there that are providing remote sessions and that are providing in-person sessions, you get to figure that out by calling. And we're also going to get a lot clearer on that, on which is remote and which is in person, because there are a lot of people that own beds privately that want to contribute remotely, but not necessarily have people into their houses. So we're working on getting all that stuff together as well for people. I think we're at like 60 something beds in the world right now. So we're slowly but surely getting out there and providing this support for everyone. And I'm really grateful, Mark, for the time to come here. And I'm super grateful, Glenn, Jamie, Ute, Mary Lynn. Like, thank you guys so much for being part of this great adventure that we move forward with together. And if there's anything else that you have in closing, Mark, that you want to ask, or anything that's like really important, then we can answer it. Otherwise, I know that you're over on time, so I want to honor that.
Yes, as much as I would like to, I would go for, I really did want that whole 2 hours, but regularly scheduled, so we're going to get to it. And Jason, I will touch base with you this evening. We will get a time set up. We just need to go ahead and get something picked, because there are so many questions, and it can. I mean, it's one of the very first things. I've tried Tesla biohealing beds. I've tried so many things, and it wasn't measurable. This was one of the first ones that was like measurable, so it was awesome. All right.
And we're actually going to get it measured, because Glenn is getting his test bed like probably in a few days. And then he's going to start doing all the research on it to prove all the stuff. And we're going to write a white paper and everything. So it will be a very valid science thing.
And we are conducting clinical trials as well.
Yep. We're working on getting clinical trials open as well. Like we're bringing it out because we know it's real. And we're investing millions of dollars to get the studies. We're investing because we're trying to change science. We're trying to change medicine. We're trying to bring about a new era of quantum fields, and also to bring energetic integrity back to the space, because that's been something that's just been off for a long time. So thank you so much for being here. And yeah, let's set something up soon, Mark.
Okay, we will. Thank you, everybody. For those that are just for RV News, going to be back in 2 or 3 minutes in the other room. Everybody take care.
Love you guys. Bye.
Thanks.